unlocking your world of creativity with best-selling author and brand innovator, Mark Stinson. This episode is brought to you by White Cloud Coffee Roasters, nestled in the heart of Idaho's mountain wilderness, where every bean tells a story of adventure. Discover the difference in their premium beans, meticulously roasted to capture the essence of the mountains. Now, listeners of our podcast can get an exclusive 10% discount. Just use the promo code CREATIVITY at checkout. Visit whitecloudcoffee.com and use the code CREATIVITY.
Welcome back, friends, to our podcast, Your World of Creativity. And today we're exploring the art and process of bringing new product ideas to life. And my guest is David Beker. He's founder and president of ABetter Design Company. We got to talk about that name, David. It is what it says it is, I guess.
I have a quick and good story about it whenever you're ready.
Let's go for it now.
All right. Well, thanks for having me on here today.
Yes.
Actually, it goes back a couple of generations. My grandfather, who was originally from Maine and then made his way into the New York area, he founded a gasket company, all those little rubber and cork little pieces that you have in all different machinery and whatever. And in those days, your younger listeners won't know what I'm talking about, but in those days, you actually had these big, fat, heavy phone books to look up phone numbers. And he thought, what should I call my company? I want to be near the beginning of anybody looking for gasket companies. So he took the A and the B, figured that would show up nice and quick. A better gasket company. That company is no longer, but I thought in tribute to my grandfather, when I decided to start this company up, I would use that.
I love that you've carried on the tradition in the Find Yellow Pages strategy.
Yes.
Yeah,
Exactly.
fantastic. David and his team, his innovations include a game called Cornhole Shootout, and it's just been nominated for a prestigious award. It's Toy of the Year in the outdoor toy category. David, what a great feather in your cap it would be to bring that award in.
Yeah, it's really fantastic. And I got to be honest, even just being nominated, even just being considered a finalist is really incredible. We're a young company. We're still getting our feet under us. And the fact that we got that support from within the industry and that legitimacy that the things we're doing are speaking to people. And it's really fantastic. So whatever it will be, we're up against some of the big boys, but even just the nomination is really a fantastic honor. And we're thrilled.
Yes, keep us posted. Folks, we're going to talk about inspiration and product development. We'll talk about bringing ideas to reality, and we'll talk about some lessons learned from a global perspective. David's going to take us a lot of different places. So, David, you've worked on all sorts of products, diverse as toys we've been talking about, but gourmet ice cream cones and everything else. And people always ask, where do you find the inspiration for these new ideas? There's the shower moment, there's the driving in the car moment, there's the walking your dog kind of moment. But what kind of sparks your creativity?
So I'll actually take it back a step if I can, because this was not the world I necessarily came from. I'm actually a social worker, and I spent most of my career in community work and informal education and things along those lines. But I think I always had a bit of an entrepreneurial bug. Maybe it came from my grandfather. And things I did very often revolved around creativity. I would say it was more revolving around people and not products, but it was program design and things along those lines. And there was I think I always had an element of creativity and wanting to try different things out and seeing how I could interact with people better and things along those lines. At a certain point, I was ready after a career of over 30 years, really, in the non-for-profit world, in the education world. I felt it was time for something different. And I was trying to think about I've got this creativity, I've got this ideas, I've got this entrepreneurial bug, where would it take me? And originally, I was not planning on opening up a company. Originally, I thought, let's take some of these ideas. I had learned about the concept of licensing and that there's all these companies out there, big and small, that are always looking for ideas and work with inventors to bring their ideas to market. And the inventor gets a cut of sales, but the companies really take it to market. And I just started thinking of ideas and I was all over the place. And while that happened, a friend of mine approached me and said, who knew I was playing with different concepts, and said, I got this idea. Let's talk. And before you knew it, we had opened up a gourmet ice cream cone company, something that doesn't exist in the way that we did it anywhere. And it was quite the journey. We sold all over Israel in the most high-end places throughout the country. We were approached by 4 of the top 7 ice cream companies in the world, names that you're all familiar with. I won't say them here, but you can imagine.
Hmm.
And just the getting your hands dirty and the creativity and thinking things through in those directions was really what gave me my start to lead me to this place. That was a long answer to a short
No,
question,
it was fantastic, and I
but
love that you describe it as a journey. I think about the whole development process from idea to reality. This idea of concepting, I was always told by a mentor that coming up with the idea is one thing, but executing the idea is really where the innovation is at, and no small feat. Walk us
100%.
through a little bit of navigating those challenges. I think about maybe prototyping, manufacturing, marketing, even the licensing and contracting you're talking about. What are some of those hurdles and potholes along the way?
Okay. So I'm actually going to take us back to the ice cream because I think it was a different experience, even though I've moved past that at this point. I think that was maybe because it was the first and maybe because it was the most hands on in certain ways. I'll use that as the example. That company started literally in front of my house, talking to my neighbor in a conversation. And then one evening in our kitchens, just buying flour from the local store and just starting to play.
Mhm.
And I'm using that word intentionally, even though it also applies obviously to the toy industry. But I think if you're going to do something like that, you got to be able to play a little bit. You got to be able to have fun with what you're doing. You got to be able to experiment. You got to be able to get frustrated and not have it bring you down too much. How many ice cream cones do we make that just wouldn't fold up the way they're supposed to, or that had holes, or the temperatures weren't right, or the taste was ridiculous, or whatever it might have been? And that's just part of the game. And you need to be able to roll with that and play with it a little bit. Might have gotten a little distracted from your exact question, but I think the first thing you just need to do really is just start playing with things, start
Mm.
figuring it out, look around what's out there. Try to figure out where you're getting your inspiration from. Try to figure out what are some of the pain points of the concepts that you're dealing with. We thought of ice cream cones, and the uniqueness of our ice cream cones was that they were, first of all, flavored. We thought everybody talks about ice cream cone and about ice cream, and the cone is really just a holder for the ice cream.
Mm.
You finish eating the ice cream, you throw away the cone, and it's empty calories. And what's the point? So let's give the ice cream cone itself some added value. So we added flavors, if it was chocolate orange or cherry hazelnut or whatever it might have been. We made it whole grain. We also added components to it, which nobody seems to have done before in terms of the almonds or the coffee or the orange bits being an integral part of the cone. So we took this thing that was a wasteful thing in many ways. You can buy them with sprinkles and this and that, but I'm talking a more basic cone for
Right.
maybe a more mature audience, quote unquote. And we added value to it because that was something we felt was missing. But it took a while to come to that conclusion and understand what would be a point of differentiation that wasn't existing. So that was one point. Second of all, again, as you said, prototyping. What Look everywhere for recipes for ice cream cones or for toy manufacturing or whatever it might have been. What materials are being used? What is out there? What isn't out there? And then try to build it a little bit yourself. It's a little bit different today than it was in my day, and maybe even more so for people who are much more technically inclined than I am, which is not. I use my hands. I need to like play with things. I need to whatever. But you can do 3D models now in a way that I'm not good at doing. For some people, that works fantastically. For others, they like touching things. They like being able to play with it. Everybody picks their own direction, but play, try, experiment, and get creative and out of the box as you are. And you're going to start with ideas that are all the way out here, and you're going to narrow them down and narrow them down and narrow them down. And you're going to bring it to a point where this can work. And you're going to try it. You're like, no, actually, that can't work. Okay, let's do it. We're going to move it over here. This can work. Okay, maybe not. Okay, until you get to a point where okay, now I got something.
So good.
That's
So
certainly
good.
a start.
We're talking about prototyping. You're describing all this play and experimentation. I imagine your workshop, both the physical and the
Right.
mental. workshop of everything that's going on, trying to say, what could this thing look like?
I'll tell you, one of the dangers of getting into this kind of field is you can't go anywhere without your mind racing. You're walking down the supermarket aisle and you're like, that's interesting. Or you're walking to a hardware store and it's like, I never thought about that material before. And like
Yes.
everywhere you go,
What if
suddenly
we
your
put
mind
this
is
on top of that?
exactly,
Yeah, I love that.
exactly. And I
Well,
don't have a huge space. So every time you think of something else and you want to try to something, you got to figure out where to put it.
yeah,
My wife isn't
something,
so happy about that.
yes, something's got to give. We talked about Cornhole Shootout. You've got another great game, Bankable. These recent toys captures obviously our imagination, and I'm sure they each have a story behind them. There it is, Bankable.
There's the bank ball.
Yeah, and you're like, wait a second. How many times have you heard somebody say, "Oh, I could have thought of that," or "I
Yes.
had a friend who thought of that"? This is like going to those craft shows, and you're like, "I could make that." I went to the Museum of Contemporary Art in Chicago. You're like, I could have painted that, but you didn't. And you're
Right.
talking about going through all those hurdles and obstacles that you just mentioned. There's a lot more than saying I thought of bankable.
So I'll say two things about it. One is one of the frustrating experiences you go through is you come up with an idea. You're like, wow, that's awesome. I never thought about that before. I've never seen it anywhere. And then you spend 5 minutes searching it on the internet, and 3,000 other people have done it already.
Yes.
That's on one hand, it's a little bit disappointing because you think you got the best thing ever. And on the other hand, you're like, okay, but you know what? Clearly, people, this idea resonates with people. So maybe I'm not so far off of where I need to go. Now I just need to think about how to manipulate that a little bit to get to a point where nobody else has really thought of it. So it shouldn't be overly discouraging. But yes, the first thing you need to do before you spend too much time, energy, and certainly money is to research your idea and see is anybody else there out there doing it. It's really pretty easy to do that today in a way that 30 years ago, 20 years ago wouldn't have been. But the internet is such a gold mine. Amazon, just go on Amazon, play around, don't get stuck on one search term. Try to think a little bit more creatively out of the box to figure out what search terms that maybe would fit into the thing I'm thinking of, because you'll find things, even if you didn't find it at first.
Yes.
But keep searching, keep thinking. That's number one. Number two, it's really all about execution. As you said, there are great ideas out there. Everybody's got fantastic ideas, but not so many people actually move forward with it. Not so many people move forward with it. There's a great entrepreneur, venture capitalist, Gary Vaynerchuk, and he's got a very short video clip, which I have shown to 1 million people, and I recommend it all the time to people. Ideas are shit, and his whole concept is that he says it straight out to a huge audience. I can give you every single idea that's going to take place in the next 20 years. I'll give it to you. I'll tell you right now. It's all about AI, and it's all about this, and it's all about that. And am I giving it to you? Because you know what? The vast majority of you are not going to do anything with it.
Mm.
It's all about execution. Ideas are great. If you don't execute, it's a vacuum. There's nothing there. And that's really where the challenge is. And that's something I've learned over the years, just because I have so many ideas. And how do you take that idea and concretize it and start getting it somewhere is really where the magic starts.
So good. We talk about the world of creativity, and your career certainly spans a lot of diverse industries and countries. Growing up in Minnesota, now in Israel, ice creams to humanitarian aid, all of these experiences. How do you feel like these have contributed and shaped your own approach to creativity?
That's an excellent question. I think it's a matter of experience, meaning I think creativity is hard, but we all have it. And it's a matter, I think, of figuring out how to tap into it. And to a large extent, that comes with experience and taking your range of experiences that you've had throughout your life and trying to capitalize on them. I mentioned that a big chunk of my career I spent working with informal education, working with volunteers in humanitarian aid situations and other kind of things along those lines. What worked for people? What connected with people? Okay, so that's one piece of it. And then looking at my own life and looking at, as I said, walking into stores and this and that, and what resonates with me, and just being able to take those things. Don't categorize your life and your experiences. Okay, this was my non for profit life. This is my business life. This is my family life. No, there's overlap in so many different directions, and utilize that and have fun with that and really take advantage of it. I think it's probably is the best thing I can say. I've
Mm.
definitely had an idea and thought of, wow, you know what? I hadn't thought about it in 20 years, but that for sure came from that experience. Because I remember, or things as a kid, especially now that I'm in the toy industry.
Mhm.
Like there are games that I played as a kid, and I was like, whatever happened to that game? And what about it that I love so much? Because I can't really do I'm not gonna do it again, but or the elements of it that spoke to me that I just couldn't stop playing it. I keep
So
playing with
good.
this idea of I created a game when I was a kid that my it was just me and my brother was a few years older than me, so he was out of the house. I was on my own a lot and certain for a bunch of years. And I had this game with a ball I played against a wall, and I created a whole game. And I keep thinking, what can I do with that? What can I do with that that's gonna be something that other people can enjoy with it in a more concrete way than I just thought of it out of my mind on the spot.
Yes. So
A
how
lot
to
of thinking.
leverage it, not compartmentalize it. Yeah, I like
Yes.
that. When you bring up family life, and I wanted to address that, if I was reading correctly, you're a father of 6.
A father of 6.
Good job juggling that. But, how do you people talk about work-life balance, but a family life in the demands of entrepreneurship for sure. But I think about it the other way, as you mentioned in the toy business. How does that inspire your creative process even?
So first of all, it's definitely a challenge. I have a home office, and that's where I work from most of the time now. Obviously, I go out for meetings or
Mhm.
travel or this or that. It's a challenge, but it's also a blessing. The amount that I'm able to be home with my kids in the morning, in the evening, bedtime, this and that, it's really I'm very blessed. I'm very blessed, especially my wife is a nurse, so she has shifts. So we're able to make our family life work and still be able to be attentive to the kids, helping them, as I said, with dinner time or with homework or carpools or whatever. So that's fantastic. The amount of time that I used to blow just driving to and from work, that's 2 hours. I've got so many more things I can do in those 2 hours. So it doesn't work for everybody. It's a challenge. You have to have the space, you have to have the mentality and the mind to be able to differentiate. It's hard, and there's certainly times where I feel like I need to shut off and I can't. That's that's certainly part of it, and the second part of your question was? Sorry, I lost the second part of your question.
Maybe how your family life inspires your
Ah,
creativity, yeah.
so look, especially now, like I'm in the toy industry. Like
Right.
I think anytime I got ideas, especially as I get a little more developed, I immediately go to my kids and I was like, "What do you guys think about this?"
Mhm.
Sometimes they're
And
like, "It's
hopefully
cool,"
they
and
don't give you the
sometimes
reaction in the, movie Big, "I don't get it." Yeah.
in certain ways, that might not be a terrible reaction.
Yeah.
There are worse reactions that could be than that. But there's one idea that we're actually bringing to market in the spring for some younger kids a little bit, and I showed it to my younger kids, and they're like, "That's awesome." It's like,
Mm,
"Score, okay, that's a good sign."
that is
And another idea is I was playing with them in the basement once, and they started building this thing with blocks and marbles and this and that, and I was like, "Keep going, let's see where you're going with this." It was great. We're still in the very beginning developmental stage of that, but that totally came from what they were playing.
beautiful.
Yeah.
Before I close and, ask you a question about the future, let's make sure everybody knows where to find you and, celebrate your work. Where can we connect with you?
Thank you. So you can certainly connect with me on LinkedIn, David Beker, A Better Design Company, Beker. Looks like Becker, but it's Beker, as we discussed. You can also find me at abetterdesigncompany.com, my website. Those are probably the two best places to find me. And you can certainly find our products so far, Cornhole Shootout and Bankable on Amazon.com and Target.com and other places, but Amazon's probably the easiest.
Yeah, wonderful, just in time
Uh,
for the holidays. Perfect.
yes, exactly.
David, you were talking about the AI and we're talking about video games and interactive and mask and goggles and everything else in the world. And yet I see a couple of your big products in a box for hands on,
Yes,
for the good old fashioned backyard
yes.
play. How do you find that sort of clash of future trends? And where do you think play is going?
So the main thrust of my company is active play, indoor, outdoor. We have some water play coming out and other things. And that's really what I believe in. Look, we all know that technology is here. I'm not a tech guy, but we all know technology is here. I sit in front of a computer way too many hours a day. My kids are always, they're very drawn to screen time, and we have to do what we can to limit that and this and that. But I really believe that active play, it's not going anywhere. People are always going to want to play basketball, always going to want to be outside. We just have to encourage that and think creatively about how to make sure that they understand that's a real value, and it's healthy and it's great. So yes, AI is changing things. Technology is constantly 15 steps ahead of me, but I believe that play is always going to exist. I really hope it does, because I think it's integral to who we are. There's a professor, Dr. Stuart Brown, who does a whole, that's really his academic direction, the area of play, and there's tremendous amount of knowledge found in there, and it's part of our developmental processes. So I'm going to stick with it. I believe in it. Keep playing outside, keep playing active, move, don't just sit in front of a screen. And so, yes, I think the future is certainly there as much as it's anywhere else.
Well, great call to action and great inspiration for us. My guest has been David Beker. His company is ABetter Design Company. I really appreciate your insights and experience today, David.
Thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate it. And good luck to everybody. Keep playing.
Yes, let's keep playing. Listeners, come back again for our next episode. And before I forget, I want to thank our sponsor, White Cloud Coffee Roasters. You can enjoy a 10% discount when you use the code CREATIVITY at checkout. That's at whitecloudcoffee.com. Explore all their handcrafted blends there. And as I said, come back again next time. We're going to continue our around the world journeys. Just in the last few episodes, we've been from Italy to Australia to Houston, Texas, today Israel. We're going to continue these journeys talking to creative practitioners everywhere in so many fields about how they get inspired, how they then organize ideas, and ultimately gain the confidence and the connections to launch their work out into the world. So until next time, I'm Mark Stinson, and we'll keep unlocking your world of creativity. Bye for now.